Hi everybody, this is Wilderness Jay. Thanks for watching. So I have a couple of projects on the go at the moment, and one of the things that I intend on showing perhaps in the next week or two is a primitive shelter. I have started building that, and we're going to look at, and I've done it really for demonstration purposes. I am building it at my base camp, and I will use it instead of a tarp or anything like that, but it's not ginormous, so you'll see that in a week or two. What I thought I would do is I would talk through my essential bushcraft gear. So we're going to have a bit of a bushcraft gear loadout today, where I'll be talking through some of my kit that I use most often. You'll have some of these things, and maybe you'll have a collection that's more extensive. Maybe you have, you know, I was on one of the Bushcraft forums this week, and one of the guys had something like 29 knives. Now I don't have that. I have a few knives, but they're all fit for purpose. But if you need more knives, that's entirely up to you. So let's start. So I think if you're starting out in bushcraft, you're going to need some essential kit. You're going to need a good bushcraft knife. Now I have one here. It's not very expensive. I have several, but this one I thought I'd show you. You would have seen this in some of the videos. This is just a very standard bushcraft knife. This is an inexpensive bushcraft knife, but it's full tang. But it's made really well. I'm quite surprised. This was very inexpensive. Some would call it a budget bushcraft knife, but I tell you what, it works for me. So it's got a really good edge, a flat grind, and you know, I wouldn't say that you're going to be able to do a lot of batoning with this knife. I mean, I would suggest something a lot longer if you're going to be batoning, but this really is a good knife for general bushcraft activities, whether it's some woodwork, feather sticks that you're making, striking a ferro rod. This is a great knife to have in your collection, and this particular one came with a leather sheath. I didn't have to make this one, but still really good to have, really good on your belt, good to go. So it's a must. So if you're starting out bushcraft, a must is a good knife. And then of course you've got the all-time favorite is a good hatchet, small axe. This is by a popular brand, but it's made really well. And I've done some of the leather work here, you know, just and I think really that's another skill to have. If you can make something instead of buying it, do that. It's a new skill, and you know, in terms of survival, these are the skills that we want to have. So here's this one, really good, Swedish made, fit for purpose. This one was provided to me with a really good edge, and I haven't sharpened it. I've had it for a while, and I haven't sharpened this one yet. Really good. So do yourself a favor and get a good hatchet if you can. Otherwise, any sharp axe would do. So another essential bit of kit that I would suggest, other than your bushcraft knife, other than your hatchet or small axe, I would suggest something, a folding saw. And I have the silky gomboy 270. There's the silky pocket boy. You have silky come out with a number of different folding saws, but this one's really good. You know, really fit for purpose, razor sharp, really good. And I've done a bit of a review or an unboxing of this particular one when I got it, so go ahead and look at the other videos. In fact, the link should appear here if you want to see just a general unboxing and basic review of this this saw. You'll have to see my other videos if you want to see this being used, but it's really good. The solo night out video that I have where I demonstrate the use of this in practice, but really good. There are other brands too, you know, that you could get. think there's the Laplander, which is another common option, a very good option for others, but I like the silky. I don't get paid by silky. It would be nice if I did, but I don't. You know, with any activity, there's always going to be the need to get fires going in bushcraft. So here's a ferro rod. Now I made the handle. You could buy them already with a handle. Some of them come with a plastic handle, some wooden with a wooden handle, but you can do that, whatever. But you know, they vary in sizes. This one is good enough for me, and I suggest, you know, this is an essential bit of kit along with your bushcraft knife. Some of them, you know, particularly with my my leatherman skeletool, you know, I just love this particular one, but I'll talk about that in a second. But this comes with a slot to put your ferro rod in. Now I plan on making a leather sheath for my bushcraft knife, which will have this, but there you have it, just essential, you know. The multi-tool that I carry, now I know a lot of guys have other multi-tools. I know Gerber make a really good multi-tool, and a few others like the Swiss Army knife, etc. I've just chosen a very basic multi-tool that has a set of pliers on it. It has a screwdriver with two bits, one that actually folds up into the knife, into the multi-tool itself there, and you can just interchange those as and when you need. It's got a belt clip as well, and of course the all-important knife. Now this one needs a bit of a sharpening. I've used it for a while. This I've had for many years, and really good bit of kit to have. Very small. So again, get yourself a multi-tool. While we're on the fire starting subject, in addition to the ferro rod, you may want to practice with a bow drill, a friction fire. There are lots of tutorials on YouTube. I'll probably upload a few videos where we look at some of these. But what I've done is I made this little pouch. You can buy them. These are, for me, now depending on where you live, if you lived in British Columbia, for instance, or in Canada, some parts of Canada, you're not going to necessarily find dry tinder. You know, I know Vancouver Island, it is soaking wet there, so you're not always going to find dry tinder unless you obviously do some feather sticks, etc. But it's pretty wet, and so what I do is I make it a practice, you know, to take some dry tinder with me. And so I have this tinder pouch, and in it I've got some birch bark, which I've collected. You know, there's some pine resin here, some pine pitch. I think I do have more tinder here with more bark. There we go. So this is a big lump of pine resin right here, or pine pitch. There's a little bit of it here, but also good to have. Great. I mean, this takes a flame like it's no one's business. So some pine pitch there, and also, I mean, you know, you find these all over the place. Some pine cones. You've never used them before, maybe, but great to have. There's a lot of resin in this, so this takes a flame really well. This I would use as a secondary tinder, but really good. Smokes a bit, depending on the pine cone, I guess, but really good to have in your tinder pouch. So get yourself a tinder pouch or make one, and then collect these things when you're out and about. And then just if they're wet, just leave them to dry. But even birch bark, really good, even when wet, really good. But this is really dry, so that's good enough for me. So I always carry paracord with me. Now you may want to, you know, develop your primitive skills where you won't use man-made materials like this, and that's great. There's some natural cordage. There's natural cordage that you can find, but I always carry loads of paracord because you just don't know. I mean, they make a good ridge line. Some of you call it a bank line, I guess. I also like using thicker rope for my ridge line, and particularly if you're doing a prusik knot, you know, it just grabs a lot better on a thicker rope than it would on something like this, but it still will work. In terms of maintenance of bushcraft items, you know, a whetstone, a sharpening stone would be a good idea. Really good. Some people use oil when they sharpen their stones. I use water, but really it's up to you. I think just practice. You cannot have open fires just anywhere, particularly on public land and especially on private land unless you have permission. But a good thing to use are these little gas stoves, you know. And then I've got a lamp, a gas lamp that I use. For me, other than my bushcraft gear that I've already mentioned, like the axe and the knife and the saw, the folding saw, this is another thing that I just, you know, this is a British Army basher. Now, I've demonstrated the use of this on several of my previous videos, so go ahead and look at it, and I'll put a link here for one of the videos. But this is really good kit to have, you know. They do have the British Army basher, the Army issue, and then of course there are the aftermarket products which are also good, but I do think that the Army basher, the original Army issues, is lighter. And with that, you can also buy these telescopic poles. Now that British Army basher, you could set up, there are a number of different configurations. You could set it up in a number of different ways, sort of do an A-frame shelter, and this is where these poles come in handy on each end of your shelter, and you can extend these depending on what you need, how high you want it to be. But obviously there are limitations. The basher has a specific size, so you're not going to be able to go incredibly high. Definitely not standing room, unless of course you just attach the basher to some trees using a bank line without these poles. But you could use these poles if you didn't have trees. This is where this comes in handy. These become your you would use on either side with some guy ropes attached. Really good to have. So these are, you'll find these online. They go really well with the British Army basher. An essential bit of kit we're talking now, really for safety, is a good pair of gloves. Now these, I will just show you, these have been through the war, you know, but they're still there. I was using my folding saw the other day, and you know, somehow I was wearing gloves, and somehow the saw slipped, and literally it sliced through the glove there. And if you could see that, and still got me. But I just dread to think what would have happened if I were not wearing these. So obviously, takes care when you're out there working with these tools, but really good to have, important to have. Something I've forgotten to include here, but I think is really important, is a first aid kit. So if you don't have a first aid kit, get one, because you're working with knives, because you're working with axes and saws, and you're dealing with trees, etc., and you're out in the elements. First aid kit, really important to have. I don't carry all of this gear. It depends on the kind of trip you're taking. If you're going for a solo night out, you're not going to be taking all of this. You're just going to have a few of your essential tools, and then your clothing, etc. But here's another good thing to have. This is a telescopic fishing rod. I think I've got a couple of lures here that you could use. A fishing rod right there. Telescopic, really good. There's so many things you could do if you didn't have something like this. I've seen guys use a fishing line with a hook, even a makeshift hook, and then a bottle, and use the bottle to reel your line in, you know, and to cast off. So really important to have something like that. I mean, this is a smaller one. There's so many things on the market. Just go have a look, really. I mean, I have other things. This is another good thing to have, which is a waterproof bag. And this one is a small one, so I would have keys, mobile phones, things like that. And you know, they make different sizes, so get yourself something like that, you know, just to protect some items that you need to keep dry. I've got one of these army canteens as well, and you know, you can clip it on your belt here, clip it on your bag, and that's got some belt straps here, and you obviously have your water bottle in there, and in addition to that you have, and then of course, and then you've got your, I've cooked, I've brewed coffee in this, I've cooked as well. You could boil water, you know, and you could use it on a gas stove like that, or straight on the fire, whatever works for you. One of the other things I said on my last video is that it's particularly if you're starting out in bushcraft, instead of spending a lot of money on getting knives that are, I don't know, hugely a couple of $100 or whatever it may be, depending on where you live, get some army surplus items like this. You know, another army surplus item that I use is this shovel. Now it's a fold-up shovel. Once you've opened it out, you tighten this, which locks it into place. And what I like about this shovel, other than the nature calls necessity, is that it has an edge. Now I don't know if you can see that right there, but it has a bit of a serrated edge right there, and I've used this to clear a brush, used this to clear material, I've used this to hack my way, you know, through a bit of bush. And again, you know, you always, particularly if you're spending the night out or a few nights out, good to have one of these. This is a light, just a head torch, and this particular one has, and you can adjust the angle of that beam. I always have some of this bungee cable around. You know, there's it has some flex, and this particular one has just a carabiner on each end, and you just never know when these things can come into use. Now, along with the basher that I've mentioned, I use, now this is an inexpensive bivvy bag. I've talked about a bivvy bag before, and a bivvy bag, simply put, is something that you lay on the ground and you put your sleeping bag into it, and it keeps you dry. You know, I use insulation, so I will have self-inflating. This is a self-inflating mattress, which you will put into your bivvy bag, and then your sleeping bag goes on top of that, just to insulate you. Now you could put material on the ground itself, you could have a raised bed, whatever works for you, but I put this here to keep myself dry, insulated, and along with this, and you know, then you're comfortable. Some of you don't like sleeping on the ground. I know some of you like to sleep in a hammock, and that's fine. This won't be necessary on that occasion. So a bivvy bag, really popular here in the UK, along with your basher, the British Army basher, really works well. And depending on the time of year, just a simple mosquito net, also really good to have. Another thing to have, depending on how you want to camp. Now, what is really popular here in the UK is wild camping. The etiquette is to leave no trace. So you get to a spot and you wild camp, and you leave that the way you found it, if not better. And this really one-man tent is brilliant. It's a bivvy tent. It is has a very low profile. It has this army green color, and it has a couple of poles and a mosquito net, etc. But it's very light. I think it weighs about 300 grams. If you prefer a tent other than a British Army basher and you want to be contained within shelter, well, this is another really good option. I know the Dutch Army tents are really great, but try this. This is, I forget the brand of this one here, but this one just says weather checked. Go and have a look at it. If you Google that, you'll come up with something. While we're on the sleeping setup, I've got an inflatable pillow here. It doesn't weigh anything really. Great to have in your pack. Now, if you're doing any sort of outdoor cooking, you're going to be doing a barbecue, or as some of my fellow countrymen in South Africa know, a braai. And so I've got a little grill here, and this one has legs, which now this I think I got from I think it was a microwave oven or a convection oven, and I nicked it off of that. And but this has stands if I need to raise it off the coal, or if you have some bricks or stones on the ground, you know. But there you have it. Very important to have if you're cooking food. I know some of you do the caveman steak option where you just put it straight on the coals, but if you don't, a bit of civilized equipment to have. I've got a little vintage kettle here. I've got another one here that I use when I'm out at base camp. Now, I like vintage items, and I've got to say that has a lot more character than anything new. But so I have that will go straight on the coals. Another bit of kit that, you know, that you're not going to be carrying this bit of kit with you in your backpack, but something that I have with me at my base camp. Now, this is called a potjie pot. It's a traditional South African pot, similar to the Dutch oven. Spoken about this before. It is pretty heavy, so you're not going to be walking around with that. But what it does is it cooks incredible meals. You can do a chicken roast, you can do what we call a potjie, like a stew, slow cook your meat, you know, on the coals. Works really well, distributes the heat really well instead of burning everything. That you can, in fact, here's a link here to a video where I cooked up a meal using that potjie pot. Here I was talking about the ferro rod, but also if you wanted to take matches, you know, good idea to just keep it in your pack anyway. You know, I've got this container here which keeps the matchsticks dry. Has a striker here on the side, so your matches are dry and this container is watertight. Really good to have. Something I take with me sometimes is this bag. Now, you can wash dishes in here, you can collect water, rainwater. I've done that before. But also, if you're foraging and you're collecting, as I demonstrated in my last video, if you're collecting nettles, wild food, mushrooms, things like that, you need something to put it in. This weighs nothing and folds up really well. But you collect your wild edibles in there. And really good. I think this particular one is also ex-army issue or army surplus. Really good to have. Now, I have these walking poles here as well. These walking sticks, which are telescopic. You can adjust the length. But if you wanted to do a bit of Norwegian walking, these work well. Particularly are useful if you're carrying a heavy pack. They provide extra stability. So let's talk about clothing. Now, I have, again, ex-army. Now, this I think has some history to it. This is another army issue item here. Now, I don't know the history. Maybe some of you could tell me a bit about this, but this one is light. So when I'm working around camp and you just need a bit of, you know, maybe it's a bit cool and you need a bit of extra protection, this is another good thing to have. It's like a duffel coat, I don't know, but here, really good. you know, really well made. Sort of a canvas material, very hard wearing, but not heavy at all. And you've got lots of zips here. But something interesting, and maybe you could tell me now, I assume this is for perhaps a parachute regiment, I don't know. But, you know, it has this long bit of material here that I suspect, now let me show you. So that's it there. And you've got this long bit of material that I suspect would go over your groin area and button onto your trousers. Just to keep this from flapping at the back. I don't know. There's an opening here. Now I don't know what that opening is for. Perhaps it's something, I don't know. You know, you could tell me. I mean, there it is. There's an opening there with a zip. Somebody know what this could be for? I'd love to be enlightened. But there you have it there. And I guess something comes through, whether you'd have to tell me, I don't know, but that's it there. Really well made. So I'll use this around camp if need be. You know, this is another really good bit of kit. This is my down jacket, and this packs up really small. I mean, there's the bag for it here, and I'll just put it right back in its bag. It's in its stuff sack. That weighs nothing, but provides incredible insulation. So get yourself one of these. In terms of waterproofing, now I have a good, this is my heavier waterproof jacket. Again, made by Berghaus. Really good. This is Gore-Tex. Now, not everybody's a fan of Gore-Tex. I like Gore-Tex items, and this jacket's really good. It's a lot more hard wearing, but there are instructions to follow if you have Gore-Tex items as to how to maintain that waterproofing. While we're on the topic of Berghaus, this is my big backpack. Now this one I really like. This I had for many years, and this is a 65 plus 10 liter C7 Berghaus Bioflex backpack. Now, what I like about this one is that it's got multiple pockets. You've got lots of these straps. It's got a waterproof bag that covers it when it's raining. But what I really like about this is the stability that it gives me. Now it's got this this padding here, but it moves. It's on a hinge, and so as you move, this moves instead of the backpack moving along with your movements, if that makes any sense. One of my vintage items that I absolutely love is this French Army La Fuma backpack. This is from around 1940, and this for me has a lot more character. I love the leather work on this, and it's very spacious. So if I'm going for a couple of nights out, this is what I would take. You know, very just this hard wearing canvas, and I'll show you. Just this has an external frame, and there you go. But really good workmanship. You know, that's, I mean, this is from the 1940s, and the condition is amazing. And I suspect that with some good care, it could last, you know, another 20 years. Who knows? But that is one of my favorite bit of kit right there. And a lot of these items will fit comfortably into there. What do you do with your sleeping bag and your inflatable mattress, your inflatable pad? Well, it has these loops, these straps here, where you can attach things to the pack on the outside, and you keep the inside of the pack for all your gear, your food, whatever it may be. And so in terms of sleeping bags, you know, you may go for a 4-season sleeping bag, you know, if it's cold, but really for most of us, we don't live in Alaska or in Canada or in Norway where it gets extremely cold, or you know, Russia or in the Arctics. But this works for me. This is a 3-season sleeping bag that I use most of the year around. I've had this for a while, and I know that there are others that work really well. So there you have it. I think the Canadian Army has a sleep system that works really well. In terms of footwear, now I have, for the longer treks and if it involves some mountaineering, I have these by Mindel, really good mountaineering boots with a bit of a rigid sole, so if you needed to use crampons, this works really well. But for most of my bushcraft activity, I have just some work boots that I could walk in. They're not too heavy, and they do the job. And often forgotten, but I think very important to have, are these gaiters that just attach on the lower half of your leg, and just keep your trousers dry, and you know, if you're walking through grass, keep the dew off of your clothing. They do make these in Gore-Tex, so gaiters, if you've never heard of them, really good. And every bushcraft kit needs to have one of these. Why not? One of the other items that I forgot to include in this is my little wood burning stove. Folds up really well, similar to the solo stove, really efficient, very light, packs up really well. And you know, if you don't have one of these, if you don't want to lug one of these around, and you cannot have an open fire, these are really well wood burning and super efficient airflow from underneath into the actual stove really well. I think the one I've got is by Homegrown Adventure. I have a look at that online, but similar to the solo stove, packs up really well. Let's not forget my famous wooden spoons. Another skill to have. Get some, you know, just practice your carving skills. And you know, I carve these out. I think carving seems to be in fashion nowadays, or particularly carving wooden spoons. One thing to bear in mind though, when carving wooden spoons, just be careful what kind of wood you use. Some of the wood, a lot of the wood has toxic qualities to them, so if you're using this for food, as you would be, it's a wooden spoon, make sure you use the right type of wood. So other than that, I think we're sorted. I think we're ready to go on a trip now, and I hope you're going to join me. So here's my suggestion. Again, just to reiterate, get some good gear. It doesn't need to be expensive gear. Make sure that your equipment is fit for purpose, needs to be up to the task, and then you build your gear from there. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I'd appreciate your comments, and if you'd like to put a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up or a like as well. Please feel free to share my video or the other videos with your friends. That would be great. And if you haven't done so already, why don't you press the sub button? I think there's a subscribe button right there. Go ahead and do that if you haven't done so already. But there are more videos to come. We're going to be looking at building primitive shelters. We're going to be going on a few solo nights out. We're going to be building a new base camp. Please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next adventure.